Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Casual Watch Talk. What we thought we'd do is something a little bit special today. Instead of doing a regular news show, we're going to do a collection review. So I'm going to start with mine this week, and then you'll have to tune in next week for Chris's. Before we start, Chris, how have you been?
Very good. Excellent. And you?
Yeah, I've not been too bad. I'm looking forward to this as well. There's a lot that, a few things that are new in the collection, and then I would say some that have left the collection, which I suppose we can talk about.
That's. Well. I'm kind of interested in all of that. Yeah.
Should we get started then?
Sure. So I guess to get started, let's maybe talk about what recently left. What's the most recent thing that left the collection?
Yeah, we can start there. Also, just obviously we've got to apologise to the audio listeners. We'll do our best to explain this, but this would be a great time to head on over to Casual Watch Reviews website to see the video version of this if you've never seen it before. But I'll try and explain the watches as best as I can for the audio listeners. What's left? Well, first, the last one that I sold was the Breitling B1 that I had, the Annie Digi.
Mm-hmm. So that's out of the collection now.
Yeah, I really liked it, but I wasn't wearing it, to be honest.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with it. It was on the larger side, but it's still very comfortable with that bracelet. But yeah, I wasn't really wearing it. The other thing that, it's like little things, isn't it, the build up? But the thing that I didn't like about it was that it's not very legible. Because the dial is so busy and the silver hands on the grey dial, it wasn't that legible, and I just found myself looking at the Annie Digi all the time.
Right, and then you're like, at that point, you're like, why not G-Shock? Right?
Everything is a progression, isn't it? And it did make me think that I'm changing my mind a lot about quartz watches, and I really wanted a high-precision quartz watch, which led to me then using the money to buy the Seiko, which we'll talk about shortly.
Okay. It's interesting. I think for my collection, the pandemic had a big impact. There was a point last year at this time where I think you and I talked about it a little bit, which was a sort of a, what does it all mean point in our collections. So because I feel like before that you were wearing that Breitling all the time, like 20, as soon as you got it, like what, 2020, you were like, as soon as you picked that up,
Yeah, you're right, I was wearing it a lot. But what was funny, this has also left the collection, I was wearing that, remember that Citizen Field watch that I had, that Japan only one,
that titanium one. Yep.
Yeah, the titanium one. Yeah, I really liked that. The bracelet was awful, but I actually quite liked the watch. But then it was funny because what triggered its demise mentally for me, I was wearing that the most during the pandemic, was the fact that the minute hand didn't go all the way to the edge, and somebody pointed it out, who I won't mention who he is, but TJ knows who he is.
Yes, exactly. Someone particular.
I'll never say who said it.
Someone very particular about indices and the number and the exact moment that they have. Yes.
That really did bother me once I started thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, it is falling short, and it just threw the dial off for me. So I was selling that one, sold that one.
I'll say too, I think he ruined, while we're into, stuff, I think he ruined the Mecha Quartz, the movements that use the 24-hour hand. It's tough. So like the new Seiko's cool, but for me that was like, oh, that's kind of a waste of a dial, or at least a waste of a sub-dial, if you will.
Oh, it is. Yeah, we were going to be releasing that review soon. Cool. Hopefully it'll either come out before this or shortly after.
So Breitling's out, Citizen's out, and then
I must have sold some others. I'm buying and selling them all the time. I'm awful with it. There's only a few that have stayed in the collection. Everything else is, especially with us moving house. The only thing you won't see here in this collection is I haven't got the Rolex here in the apartment, so I haven't got that here to show you.
Go get the special. Go get the safe. Go get the.
I don't like to keep it in the house. I don't like to, especially because we're in an apartment and there's no safe or anything here. So.
Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I took a look at my sort of Instagram collection review, and it is fascinating to me the way you have collected and the way I have. I feel I probably have more of a traditional build up, whereas you are more like the flipper. And I think you flipped. I mean, I think you flipped some pretty. I mean, that you had a Tudor, you had a Black Bay that just came and went, and some other heavy hitters that came and went. So
yeah, Speedmaster. I suppose flipping is the wrong term because I've never made any money on a watch.
True.
The only watch I've ever made money on was the Speedmaster,
Yeah.
and that's only because I had it for 10
and
years.
and you had that,
but everything
and
else.
then you had
is,
that mega service too. You had it mega serviced, and so it was like fresh on the service, completely overhauled. So that's I totally get that. No, and I didn't mean that as a derogatory way. I meant that as more of a you will enjoy, spend time with, experience, and kind of move on for whatever reason, whether it's, like you said, like a subdial, or you're not wearing it anymore, or value changes or opinion changes, things like that. So yeah, not in a bad way, but interesting. And this is typical, or not typical, but like it's in fitting with your YouTube review mentality and style that you've had. So it kind of lines up. So what have we got? What have we got today?
Well, first up, really quick, I'll just go through the ones that are the keepers in the collection, and I'll go through these quickly. But first of all, what you're looking at here is a vintage Timex watch, and this was my grandfather's, so this is very important to me. It does still work. It's not actually running here. I don't know how to set the date on it, to be perfectly honest, but it's a good example of those very small. I think it's probably maybe pushing 36 mil. But just goes to show you how those watches in the 50s, 60s, and 70s were that smaller size.
It might not have a quick set date. You might have to go around. I mean, this is, 1950s tech. You might have to go around the 12 a bunch of times to get it on the right day.
What's the couple of things that are interesting about this? Well, first of all, it belonged to my grandfather, so it's very precious to me. I had an American grandfather and a British grandfather, and this belonged to my American grandfather, except the funny thing is it's one of those Timexes that was made in Great Britain, so it actually says Great Britain on the inside of it. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And yeah, going back to the quick set, it's got a day date as well, and I've never been able to work out how to do it.
Oh, okay.
How to get the day and the date. But anyway, so that's that one. And then I'll just quickly cycle through this next one. This one is a CWC watch. This is the CWC G10, as it's affectionately known, but it's essentially the CWC. This one is old enough to be one that was issued. So it was issued to a British service member in the late 80s, early 90s. I wore it for a long time. I wore it for probably before I properly got into watches, which was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I guess I wore this from the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, right up to the point where I gave it to my father-in-law. Unfortunately, he passed away and it came back in my collection. But these things, I've mentioned this countless times on the channel before. If you go to the CWC website now, which is now owned by a company called Silverman's, they bought the rights, the Cabot watch company. They're selling these for $300, and I got this one for £40. There was a time when you went to antiques fairs, you went on eBay, you could pick these up for £20, £40. You never paid any, because there was just loads of them around. And I wish that I'd got more, but this is in great condition. It's missing some of the lume from the hands a little bit, but it's still working. It's not one that I wear. It's on the smaller side. I think this is 36. It looks good on a bund strap. I probably would wear it on a bund strap. My wife's worn it a bit as well.
Cool.
Okay, and then final, just cycling through these ones that are the definite keepers, is this next one is a I think it's 1976. This is my British grandfather's watch, and this is a very early Casio LCD watch.
Cool.
Still works like the day it was made. There's some scratches on the glass, but overall it's in fantastic condition, and he wore this all the time. I'm amazed it's still working. An LCD watch from the 70s.
Right, yeah.
One of the early Casio LCD ones. So it just shows you that how well Casio watches are made, really.
Cool.
Okay. So those are the three keepers, the ones that I always cover. Let's get started with the actual wearing collection, should we say. And the first one is one that you know very, very well. And this is the what we affectionately called the Ultimate Turtle. This was a Save the Ocean, I don't know whether the limited edition, but it was a Save the Ocean Turtle. Let me just get the
I feel like,
correctly
I think it was, not limited per se. It's a hard to get dial now.
Yeah, it wasn't numbered limited,
right.
But it was that season. It was the release that year of the Save the Ocean. I think this is the best one they ever did with that black to brown dial. Dial on this is insanely good. And then you very kindly modded it for me, didn't you?
Yeah. You've had a lot. It's interesting. With this one in particular, your preferences for, it came out definitely in this watch, and so it's cool that you've kept it and kept it around. So you definitely like what you like. So as far as like, we went through 3 sets of hands on it. There was, some sort of, some continual adjustment regulation. That's what we kind of started with, because it just needed to be a little bit, I think I'm a sharper accuracy person than you are, but you just can't, like, when it got to like 15, I think it was like 30 seconds or something, you were like, I can't do it. So, I think it has a great looking dial. I think the hands that you found, those Marine Master style hands, primo, and they're hard to get with, the loom correct and the finishing correct. And you paid a little bit for the nicer loom and the nicer hands. And I was definitely terrified pressing them on, because those Seiko hands, they can go on and off like twice. So.
Yeah, you're right. I found this place. I don't know even how I found it, where it's this guy, I think he's in Sweden or Norway, and he only sells these hands, and they are perfect. They have a bevel down the middle. They're much better than the Marine Master hands that you can buy in most places where they're flat. They've got a real texture to them. It's gorgeous. And then the domed sapphire crystal, and then we completely replaced the movement for the NH36, so it doesn't have its original movement in. Still runs great. I've got it on this, my favorite Uncle Seiko razor wire strap, razor wire bracelet, which I think suits this perfectly.
Yeah, cool.
Next up on the list is one from the boys over at Veya, and this is the Veya Tropic or Veya Tropical dial watch. So this is running the Miyota 9015, I believe. This is from Ryan and Reagan over at Veya Watches. This was their first diver. Has a very unusual dial, similar, sort of pays homage to a vintage Jaeger LeCoultre watch. Runs great, dome sapphire. It's got a gorgeous ceramic bezel with loom inlay. I've got it on a NATO here. It did come with a bracelet, but I wasn't crazy about the bracelet it came with, so I've always had it either on a Tropic or a NATO.
Yeah, no, pretty unique dial on that, and cool to see it stick around. You and as revealed in our last show, I'm admitted walking away from the dive watches, and you've already opened with two big ones. So
yes, yeah, I have. Then next up is what I find. I'd reviewed a couple of Christopher Ward watches, and then they did a sale. And I think I picked this watch up for less than $800, but it was worth its original price, which I think was around $1,000. But this is the C60, beautiful blue dial, ceramic bezel. This is Christopher Ward, and just incredible. The way that the value for money with Christopher Ward watches. I know we keep going on about it on the podcast.
It's interesting. This really kicked off the CW stuff for the channel, for me, for, you know, so this is the entry point where, you know, you pick this up and it was on their sale. And yeah, I mean, once you had it, you were like, you guys have to take a look at this stuff. You guys have to, you know, you have to take a second glance at this. Let's take a look. So it kind of opened up for us. And yeah, that's what kind of kicked off the casual watch CW talk.
The great thing about this is it's using the Sleater SW200. I would like it if it was a bit more regulated. This isn't one of their cost ones, and it's running about 10 seconds fast a day, which I would prefer it if it was less than that, to be honest. But the things I love about it, the blue color, that light catcher case, the bracelet has the diver's extension on it, which is so useful, especially in the heat. You can extend it really easy. There's like a little latch on the clasp that you just can extend larger. The great thing with Christopher Ward is that they're simple designs, but very well executed. So the dial on here looks quite simple, but the way that the hands are finished, the hour hand, you look like you could cut yourself on it. The way that the indices are finished with the polishing and the brushing and the chamfering, the second hand, the overall execution, I think they're one of the best value Swiss watches that you can buy that I've ever reviewed on the channel, and I've reviewed hundreds of watches on the channel, and I still think Christopher Ward offers some of the best value. I'd reviewed a couple of Christopher Wards. I've reviewed that World Timer, if you remember. And then I also reviewed their Sealander watch as well, which has a similar dial to this, and that's what really sold me on this. And I didn't realize that this watch came in different sizes, so they do different versions. This is the 40 mil, but they do a 42 mil in this as well. So this is perfect. It's got the 20 mil lug width, looks great on. It's not a strap monster per se, because there's some straps like flat leather ones and flat other ones that doesn't really enhance
plus that
it.
Blue, sometimes I feel like I'm committing a crime putting a black strap on a blue watch, but
yeah, I'm funny with, it's a good job that this isn't a watch strap review, because then that would take me absolutely ages to do the watch strap review. So impressed with Christopher Ward. This isn't, I know people, even somebody commented on our last video like, are you sponsored by Christopher Ward? Or like, I wish we were. We'd love a sponsorship from Christopher Ward.
But no, this I mean, it's, you know, it's good to see, like, this is the one that kind of captured your imagination, captured our attention, and you know, focused that. This is also, I would say, right when they started to get their design language really dialed in, you know. So we like everything they're doing.
Agree.
We like everything they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get to the latest edition, let's just quickly go over the two Swatch watches that Chris warned me that I was going to become a huge Swatch watch collector, and I've been very, very careful.
He's been. You're building a new house, so I mean, you got that special, you know, Swatch museum. Are you going right off the garage with that, or are you?
Oh, can you imagine? No, I've been very good with these Swatch watches, and I think it's because I've only bought them when they've meant something. So I think this one that we're looking at now is one that summed up, I think, 2020 for me, and it's the Tokyo Olympics that says 2020 on it. They don't sell this one anymore, and they sold out of these pretty fast. And I think it just summed up, because if, as everyone's aware, they cancelled the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. It did happen in 2021.
Right, these games did not happen in 2020, exactly.
And I think Lee over on the Facebook group, he collects these Olympic ones as well. But as you can see, it says Tokyo 2020, and I bought it in 2020 as soon as the games were officially cancelled, because the good thing with watches is not only the history the watch has, but the association that you bring to it, and that kind of summed up 2020 for me. And then the only other Swatch I currently own is the air quotes is this one, and this is a pretty important Swatch, and I bought it as an investment, and this is the Mickey dot watch, and this was made by Damien Hirst.
Mm-hmm.
Damien Hirst, the famous artist. If anybody's not familiar with Damien Hirst, he was very famous for, he cut a cow in half and put it in formaldehyde. There's actually Damien Hirst in the Palms in Vegas. There's a shark that's split into 3. So Damien Hirst has this style. His painting style is to do with dots, and some of his works are just dots, polka dots. But he made a Mickey Mouse out of dots. So I'm a big Disney fan. People on the podcast know. And so this was perfect. This was the one. This was a limited edition, and there was another one that was even more scarce than this. It was ruthless. We were waited up till midnight to try and buy one on the Swatch site, and the site crashed.
Oh, that's right.
And they were gone in seconds.
Yeah. That's
so I was really annoyed about that. Yeah, it was. I was really annoyed about that. And they made also somebody who is a viewer of the show sent me a picture in. I'm not sure if I can find it. If I can, you're looking at it now. They made a maxi version of the other Swatch. So there was a Damien Hirst maxi clock. Wall clock.
Oh, right. Okay.
If I can find one on eBay now, I'll flash it up. But those go for, I've seen them go for $5,000, $8,000. I mean, this is serious business.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping this on. I can't remember whether there was, I think it was a limited edition of 4,000 and the other one might have been 400. But they have done other limited edition Mickey watches. In fact, they did a Keith Haring ones most recently. I like Keith Haring as an artist, but I wasn't crazy about the way they did the swatches, so I didn't go for that. So those are my two Swatch watches that I have in the collection.
Nice.
If you've seen micro brand reviews on the channel, a lot of those I actually give away to people. So there's a micro brand that went to a friend of mine, Mark, who lives in Thailand. He also had off me the Walbrook skin diver.
Oh, right.
So I had that Walbrook skin diver that you modified. So that's gone to a very good home.
Oh,
That's
cool.
gone to Mark. Actually wears that a lot. And then also I sent him another watch, and I can't remember. It was one of the Spinnaker ones that I reviewed. One of the Spinnaker compressor style watches. So those are other watches that you might have seen. And then last on the list here is the brand new, the Seiko speedtimer. You're looking at it here on an Uncle Seiko razor wire. This is the newest addition to the collection that I'm just about to publish the review on it. When I publish the review, there'll be a link at the top of this.
Nice.
I really like this watch. We've talked about me selling watches for nitpicky reasons and things build up, and I'm resisting mentally this watch. To me, I think it could be a little bit bigger, but I'm stopping myself from obsessing about it, because when I spoke to TJ about it, who owns the black version of this, he was like, just wear it because you'll notice that it's the correct size for your wrist. It fits really well. But I think because I'm so used to seeing larger chronographs from Seiko.
Yeah, or if you're just used to a larger, if you're used to if you're wearing a Panerai all day and then you flip over to a 1970s Seiko, you're like, where did the watch go?
Well, yeah, and the watch itself is a very similar size to the Christopher Ward. But I think what makes me mentally think that it's smaller is the short lug width. It's got quite a short lug width. Whereas the Christopher Ward's got quite a long lug width. I've taken it off its metal bracelet, was not crazy about that metal bracelet at all that it comes with. The clasp only has 2 points of micro adjustment on it, which I think is a shame. And I noticed that they released the mechanical at the same time, and the mechanical one also uses that same bracelet, but the mechanical one is like $3,000, and I'm not quite sure what they're going for there.
With the same bracelet. That's
same bracelet that's on this. It looks very similar.
Now I feel like I'm getting a deal if I get the quartz one, right? You're like, oh, I got the same bracelet. Yeah,
this is the blue one. They do a white, they do a gold, but they've done a fantastic job of this. The bezel looks ceramic, but I don't think it is. But they've used a dome sapphire on there. They've not used the hardlex. The way Seiko do such an amazing job of the dials, but there's an applied logo on there. I agree with you about the 24-hour indicator, actually, but it does have a running second, so I give it a pass. I hate seeing the bi-compacts where there's no running seconds.
Oh, right, yeah.
Now they don't specifically say this is Mecha Quartz, and it hasn't got a VK denotion on there. But I'm just set the chronograph off now, and you'll see it is ticking like a mechanical watch. I think it does 5 ticks per second.
Okay, pretty good.
So there you go. So those are that's mainly the core collection there of the watches that I currently own. I probably wear the Christopher Ward Turtle and the new Seiko the most.
Yeah.
I also have a G-Shock that I've not got here. I use that as an alarm clock. That's the one that I modded to have the metal case.
Right, that's right.
That's a cool with the Alibaba metal case on there.
Did you now? Do you think that you are going to keep the Rolex as an investment? Do you think you're going to crack it out of the box, or you're just going to keep it as an investment?
No, I've just kept it as an investment. First of all, it doesn't have the date on it, and I'm a big sucker for the date.
I see.
What got me thinking about buying a watch for an investment, because I know it's probably a difficult subject. Most people can't understand why you would buy a watch as an investment. And I was having a conversation with somebody I used to work with, and they'd got really into investing in precious stones, gemstones. And I've got investments in crypto, in stocks, and I understand those. And he was pitching this idea to me. Oh, you should. And I said to him, well, it's interesting, but I don't understand it.
Right.
And he's like, well, what do you understand? I'm like, well, I understand watches. And he's like, well, why don't you invest in watches then? And that's what got me thinking about it. So I actually liquidated some of my crypto.
I see. And flipped over to...
That'll be an interesting... Yeah, that'll be an interesting comparison to do, especially the way that crypto's gone at the moment. That'll be an interesting comparison one day. What if I'd kept it in crypto, what would it be worth versus... I sold Cardano. This isn't financial advice, but I sold some Cardano that I had. So it'll be interesting to see how the Rolex has gone up.
It's an interesting topic to in the watch realm. We kind of talk about it sometimes where you shouldn't. You hear the advice like, there are some YouTube channels that are trading and investing in luxury watches like they are the stock market, and it is 4:30 and the bell is ringing. I mean, that is and there it is, like a watch collection for it to appreciate in value and that sort of level. And then we have a bunch of other channels that may and folks that may say, well, you shouldn't really invest in it, because it's probably could lose money, or this is going to lose money, or that, sort of thing. And if you had, and as you said, like, had you left your money in crypto instead of purchasing a Rolex, like what would you have done? How would that have gone? But there again, you have the expertise or the understanding of the industry, enough of the understanding of the industry to put some money down in the space. I feel it's very similar to, almost identical to cars, because you should not, it's a depreciating asset. You're driving around a depreciating asset. And this concept that you could make money in cars. Well, there's plenty of people making money in cars, and there's plenty of people that, have a warehouse with old 90s, beloved Japanese domestic market cars that are going to make a fortune. We've got a 25-year rule in the United States, and once that is up for the Nissan Skyline, a classic car from the 90s that everybody loved, those are coming in at $200,000-$300,000 in crazy condition. So it's not, I think that there's some more there, and maybe there's a future show here, but I think there's some more that can be talked about, that it's not just one or the other. It's not just don't buy this because it's just going to depreciate and you're going to lose money and you're a fool kind of thing. And also we show that you can do this, but also it's dangerous. You got to know what you're doing. You gotta.
Yeah, this is not financial advice.
Exactly. But yeah, I feel like it's a big, it's a gray area topic that I think the watch groups or the people that I follow and listen to are either sort of in one camp or the other.
And I agree. And this Rolex is not. This is like a long-term investment. I equally have the utmost disdain for people that buy limited edition watches on Hodinkee the day that they come out and then try and flip them straight away on eBay. This idea that, well, it's legal to do it. I mean, there's plenty of things that are legal but are also like highly immoral.
And I wouldn't even call them flippers. I'd call them scalpers.
Yes.
It really is scalping because they're standing there, they're third in line. And instead of buying one, they'll buy 30. And the 30 people behind them in the back of the line will not be able to buy one. And then they'll turn around and be like, yeah, so I bought 30 for $100 and now I'll be in the parking lot and these are on sale for $300 a piece. So, yeah, scalping.
I think Hodinkee have got better at that, haven't they? I think recently they haven't been doing so many crazy ones that I've seen recently. I don't know how that new Timex has gone. But...
Yeah, I mean, I want to see them have an account login that locks you into one of them. I think that's the only way to do it, where it's like you log in with your email address. And I mean, if some crazy person wants to go and make 1,000 verified email addresses and go to town with it, great. But also, let's sell these things to real people. All right. So we've seen this is the end of 2021 for the collection. What do you have your eye on for 2022?
I think for 2022, I've got a couple of ideas. I would love to. I know I've just talked about my OP being an investment, but if I did save up for it, I would definitely also like a Datejust, a 41 mil Datejust with a slate grey dial. I would love that. But I think shorter term goal than that, I'm seriously looking at buying a Grand Seiko, whether it's the all quartz F9 version or whether it's one of the spring drive ones. I'm just waiting to see what they release this year. There's nothing that quite. The good thing as well is they keep their value on resale. You're not getting like a bargain on a used spring drive at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, I've looked. They're right there. It's little like maybe, used and 5-7% in the used market. It's not a lot, which is great for that. Yeah, I think that'd be cool because although we beat them up a bunch, we're fans of Seiko, and certainly fans of Grand Seiko. I am with you on the spring drive movement. I'm waiting to see it come into something more my style. And when you guys see my collection, I kind of feel like I have a style which is apparent to some people, but not apparent to me. So I guess if they just made like a spring drive field watch or a spring drive pilot's watch, then I'd be all in. But I think the technology is cool, and I'd definitely love to get one.
I've heard a rumor that they are going to be starting to put the spring drive indicator on the back of some of the watches, so it won't be on the dial. Okay. And you're right, I've definitely been looking for that spring drive, maybe the GMT or something, but I find the current GMTs that they've released, there's something about the design that I think it's not found its ground yet. The Grand Seiko GMTs, it's not quite found that one design it can hang its hat on. Yeah, they've got.
Sorry, no. They use a bunch of different textures and a bunch of different colors, and I think maybe just one too many colors.
I agree with you, because for their sports watch, dress watch, the Snowflake is the definitive version, isn't it? But when you think of the more sportier ones, the GMTs, that I don't think there's, to your point, I don't think there's quite a definitive edition of it.
Yeah. I'd like to see, because they had a Seiko diver with the spring drive in it, and then they had a Grand Seiko diver, and it was a very similar style. And I'm sort of waiting for them to branch out to say like, okay, this is the Grand Seiko style diver that we're gonna do, and it's gonna look on its own. Yeah, cool.
Well, guys, let us know in the comments section down below what you think. Next week, we'll be doing Chris's review, so definitely tune in for that. Appreciate you watching and listening, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk.